You are listening to the Pregnancy Podcast with Vanessa Merton.
Hello. Thank you for tuning into the Pregnancy Podcast. Today, we're talking about how to mentally prepare for motherhood. Today is Mother's Day in the United States, and I'd like to wish you a very happy Mother's Day. Becoming a mom is a really profound mental and emotional transition, and that side of motherhood does not get nearly enough attention. So today felt like the perfect day to talk about it. There's so much focus during pregnancy on the physical side. You're getting ready for your baby's arrival, your body's changing, you're preparing for birth. There's a long list of things to learn about: feeding, sleeping, caring for a newborn. All of that matters. But what gets much less attention is the mental and emotional shift that comes with becoming a mother. So in today's episode, I'll walk you through 10 ways to mentally prepare for motherhood. Hear what the research tells us about how your brain adapts during pregnancy, why bonding doesn't always happen at first sight, learn what to expect for your relationship with your partner, and how to navigate the harder emotions that can come with being a mom. Whether this is your first baby or it's not and you're growing your family, mentally preparing for this new phase is one of the most valuable things that you can do before your baby arrives. You can see the full article and all of the resources that accompany this episode at pregnancypodcast.com/motherhood. You are currently listening to the public feed of the podcast. That means that you'll hear ads and have access to a limited selection of episodes. Become a Pregnancy Podcast Premium member to get access to every episode of the podcast in an ad-free private feed in your favorite podcast app. Plus, when you sign up, you'll get a free copy of the Your Birth Plan book that walks you step by step through creating your birth plan with samples and a template you can download and customize. Check it out at pregnancypodcast.com/premium. VTech is the #1 baby monitor brand in North America and trusted by millions of families. The VTech RM6756 monitor has color night vision, a 5.5-inch HD screen, and ultra-wide 135-degree viewing with free remote access and no subscription fees. Save $10 at Target May 10th through May 16th. Check it out at pregnancypodcast.com/VTech. Zoller goes above and beyond in formulating their prenatal plus DHA. It's made with high-quality ingredients like the active form of folate, bioavailable iron, and essential nutrients like omega-3s. In the month of May 2026, save 40% on the Zoller Prenatal Plus DHA on Amazon with the code PREPODS40. That's PREPODS40. You can always check for the current promo code at pregnancypodcast.com/vitamin. 8 Sheep Organics makes natural handcrafted products with clinically proven ingredients for common pregnancy symptoms like stretch marks, insomnia, restless legs, and leg cramps. Every product comes with a 100-day happiness guarantee. If you're not 100% happy with your purchase, simply send them an email and they'll get you a refund, no questions asked. Save 10% when you go to pregnancypodcast.com/8sheep. Mentally preparing for motherhood is not about having all of the answers ahead of time. It's about knowing what to expect, setting realistic expectations, and giving yourself permission to feel what you feel as you go through it. Every experience is different, and there's no single right way to step into this role. So we're going to talk about 10 tips in today's episode. These draw on research and patterns that I have seen over years of helping thousands of expecting parents prepare for what comes next. Every tip is designed to help you feel more ready for the inner work of becoming a mom. Number 1, is you're becoming a new version of yourself. One of the biggest shifts is the shift in the sense of who you are. And you don't stop being the person that you were before, but you add a new identity on top of that. And the two have to find a way to coexist. For many new moms, this is harder than expected. There is a word for this transition. The term is matrescence. This was coined by a medical anthropologist back in the 1970s. This describes the developmental transition into motherhood, similar to the way that adolescence describes the transition into adulthood. This is a gradual process that includes physical, emotional, social, and psychological change. And just like adolescence, it takes time and it's not always smooth. Research backs this up. A qualitative study of first-time mothers described the transition as oscillating between a sense of loss for the former self and the joy and expectations of forming a new family. Another framework, sometimes referred to as fracturing identities, describes how mothers experience a fracturing of their prior identity in early postpartum as they're working to reassemble a new sense of self that includes their child. This is all a normal part of the process, even though in the moment it can feel a little destabilizing. Your relationship with your body is also part of this shift. A meta-analysis on body image during pregnancy identified woman versus mother as one of the central themes that women describe. Many women experience these as competing identities. The point here is give yourself permission to grieve parts of your pre-baby life while still being excited about becoming a mom. Both of those things can be true. You're not just becoming a mom on top of who you already were. You're expanding into a much fuller version of yourself. Number 2 on our list of 10 tips is that your brain is adapting for motherhood. If you've experienced walking into a room and completely forgotten why you went in there, if you've struggled to recall a word that you know is on the tip of your tongue, you've probably experienced what can be referred to as pregnancy brain or mom brain. And the temptation is to view this as a deficit, but the research suggests something very different. A landmark study in 2017 took brain scans of women before and after pregnancy. What researchers found was that pregnancy is associated with substantial, long-lasting alterations in brain structure. Gray matter volume decreased in regions linked to social cognition, and most of those reductions persisted 2 years later. The research concluded that these changes may serve an adaptive purpose for motherhood. The same brain regions that lost gray matter showed the strongest neural activity when mothers viewed pictures of their own babies. Newer research has built on these findings. In 2024, a study used precision MRI to scan a first-time mother across 26 sessions, from preconception through 2 years postpartum. Total gray matter volume and cortical thickness decreased throughout pregnancy and then partially rebounded after birth. In 2025, a much larger study followed 179 women and found that gray matter volume decreased by up to almost 5% across 94% of the brain during pregnancy, with partial recovery postpartum. The most pronounced changes were in regions associated with social cognition, and the extent of brain change correlated with maternal attachment. A decrease in gray matter volume sounds very alarming, but the research really suggests that it's not. Your brain isn't getting worse, it's being remodeled. Researchers have compared it to the brain changes that happen during adolescence, which actually fine-tune neural circuits for the next stage of your life. Pregnancy brain is part of how your brain is preparing you to attach with your baby, to recognize their cues, anticipate their needs, and ultimately to bond with them. The big takeaway is that the forgetfulness or the fogginess that you may be experiencing is not a sign that you're losing your edge. It's a sign that your brain is doing exactly what it needs to do. Number 3 is plan for time to adjust. The weeks and months after you have your baby are a major adjustment. You're recovering from birth, you're bonding with a new human, you're learning how to take care of them, navigating breastfeeding, and you're figuring out a completely new rhythm. Planning for this period in advance will make a real difference. Many cultures have long-standing traditions around postpartum rest. Lying in describes a dedicated period of rest and bonding for a new mom and her baby. Depending on the culture, that can last anywhere from a few days to a month or more. In some Asian cultures, this is called the confinement period. In Latin American cultures, it's called the cuarentena, which is a 40-day period of rest and gradual reintroduction to everyday tasks. In the United States, there is much less cultural support for this kind of recovery. And instead of being encouraged to rest, most new moms feel pressure to bounce back quickly. And this really works against your body's natural recovery timeline and the time it takes to settle into life with a new baby. A modern take on this is the 5-5-5 rule. For the first 5 days postpartum, you stay in bed as much as possible. For the next 5 days, you stay on or around the bed. And then for the final 5 days, you gently move around the house. This compresses the traditional lying in into 15 days, which is much more realistic for many families. And even if you don't follow it exactly, the principle is really what's important. Rest, recover, and bond with your baby before you try to do anything else. Whatever your plan looks like, give yourself permission to take longer than you think you should. Every new mom adjusts on her own timeline, and you may not be ready to leave the house with your baby right away. It may take you longer than expected to feel like yourself, and that's okay. If you tend to be hard on yourself, try talking to yourself the way that you would talk to a close friend. If your best friend called you and said that she was struggling to leave the house with her baby a month in, you wouldn't tell her that she was failing. You would tell her that she's adjusting and it takes time. So consider offering yourself the same grace. Number 4 is expect constant change, especially with sleep. Once you become a mom, your sense of routine becomes a moving target. As soon as you figure one thing out, your baby will change the rules. So you're going to settle into a feeding pattern, but then you're going to hit a growth spurt that will completely reset it. Just when nap times feel predictable, a new sleep regression will roll in. The more flexible you can be, the easier all of this will feel. The single biggest schedule change is sleep. One study found that in the first 3 months postpartum, women average 1 hour less of sleep per night. Sleep duration improves by about 30 minutes in months 4 through 6. But this same study found that sleep levels do not fully recover to pre-pregnancy levels even 6 years after birth. Now, I know that may sound terrible, but this is also useful information. Setting realistic expectations now will make the reality of less sleep much easier to handle later. You've probably heard the advice, sleep when the baby sleeps. The reality is that many mothers find this very hard to do. When your baby's sleeping, you may be tempted to take a shower, to eat a hot meal, to do the dishes, throw in a load of laundry, or just have a few minutes to yourself. The goal is to prioritize sleep when you can without beating yourself up when you choose otherwise. Beyond sleep, the most useful mindset shift is this. The tough phases that feel like they will never end will end. And those sweet phases that you wish would stick around forever will not last forever. So the takeaway here is that every phase is temporary. And knowing that is genuinely useful in both directions. When things are hard, knowing that they're temporary can help you get through them. And when things are sweet, knowing that they're temporary can remind you to be present for them. Number 5 on our tips to mentally prepare for motherhood is hard emotions don't mean something is wrong. The way that motherhood is portrayed in books, movies, especially on social media, is overwhelmingly positive. Emphasis is on the joy and the bliss with very little space for the harder feelings. And the reality includes a much wider range of emotions, and most of these are not making it to a highlight reel on your feed. Mom guilt about working or about not working, ambivalence about your old life, grief for the freedom that you used to have, resentment towards your partner. For some moms, the harder emotions can escalate to anger that comes out of nowhere or intrusive thoughts that can be really unsettling. These feelings are quite common, and feeling them does not mean that you're a bad mom. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. These are a normal part of a transition that can be genuinely hard. And even harder if you are lacking support or near sleep deprived, all the things that come with being a new mom. Some moms are surprised by how often anger surfaces in early motherhood. A study of 278 mothers with infants between 6 and 12 months old found that 31% reported intense anger, scoring at or above the 90th percentile on a measure of anger. Among those mothers, half also showed signs of probable postpartum depression. The researchers found that the mother's sleep quality, depressive symptoms, and frustration about their infant's sleep were all significant predictors of anger. The phenomenon often called mom rage is a real thing, and it's documented in research. Feelings of anger are closely tied to accumulated stress, lack of support, and not enough rest. This isn't a sign of weakness or bad parenting. It's also important to know where the line is between normal hard emotions and those that need additional support. Most mothers experience baby blues in the first 2 to 3 days after birth. This generally includes mood swings, crying spells, anxiety, difficulty sleeping. Baby blues affect 50% or more of new mothers. Some studies show a prevalence as high as 80%. Now, the good news is that the baby blues typically resolve on their own within 2 weeks. Postpartum depression is more serious and lasts longer. Recent data shows that postpartum depression is more common than older statistics suggested. A study published in 2024 examined more than 442,000 births and found that postpartum depression diagnosis rates rose from over 9% in 2010 to 19% in 2021. One really big thing that I think gets missed a lot that's really critical to understand is that postpartum depression can happen to anyone. If you have a history of depression, anxiety, trauma, that does increase your risk, but there are plenty of women with zero mental health history that don't have a history of depression, anxiety, that end up experiencing postpartum depression. This is not a sign of weakness or failure to prepare. This is a medical condition that needs treatment. Another condition to be aware of is postpartum anxiety. This is similar to postpartum depression in that it is a perinatal mood disorder, but the symptoms look different. Instead of persistent sadness or hopelessness, postpartum anxiety shows up as persistent worry, racing thoughts, an inability to relax, and physical symptoms like a racing heart or trouble sleeping due to worry. Then you have postpartum psychosis. This is rare. This affects roughly 1 to 2 in every 1,000 women, but it is a psychiatric emergency that requires immediate care. Symptoms can include hallucinations, delusions, severe confusion, paranoia, or thoughts of harming yourself or your baby. So if you or anyone around you notices these symptoms in the days or weeks or even months after birth, you want to get medical help right away. If you are noticing symptoms of any of these conditions, please reach out to your care provider as soon as possible. Trying to just power through this on your own will only make it harder, and it will delay getting support that can be genuinely helpful. Even if you're not experiencing any symptoms, therapy or counseling can be really valuable during this transition. A therapist can really be a safe, non-judgmental space to help you process everything that you're going through, and you don't have to be in the middle of a crisis to benefit from that. We have covered the first 5 of 10 tips to mentally prepare for motherhood. Before we move on, I'd like to thank the sponsors that have supported today's episode. A lot of companies offer exclusive discounts for Pregnancy Podcast listeners, and you can always see discounts and promo codes at pregnancypodcast.com/resources. VTech is the #1 baby monitor brand in North America and trusted by millions of families. If you want to see your baby from another room, from the backyard, or from somewhere away from home, a monitor with smartphone access is a must. The tricky part is finding one that doesn't lock that feature behind a monthly subscription. The VTech RM6756 video baby monitor solves that problem. You get free live remote access through your smartphone or tablet with no subscription fees ever. At home, you can watch on a 5.5-inch high-definition color LCD screen, and you're going to get ultra-wide 135-degree viewing so you can see more of the room at a glance. Color night vision gives you a much clearer picture in low light than traditional black and white night vision, and the touch adaptive multicolor night light automatically adjusts brightness to match the nursery. You also get a 2-way talkback intercom, lullabies and ambient sounds including white noise, a temperature sensor, and up to 1,000 feet of range. VTech makes amazing monitors, and that's why they're trusted by millions of families. Save $10 on the VTech RM6756 monitor at Target from May 10th to May 16th. Check it out at pregnancypodcast.com/VTech. That's VTECH. When it comes to prenatal vitamins, the options can feel overwhelming. I've spent a tremendous amount of time and energy looking into the nutrients that matter most during pregnancy and which forms are optimal for you and your baby. My #1 recommendation for a prenatal vitamin is the Zoller Prenatal Plus DHA. And that's because Zoller goes above and beyond in formulating their vitamin with high quality ingredients, like the active form of folate, bioavailable iron, and essential nutrients like omega-3s. Zoller bases their formula on the latest scientific evidence, not outdated RDAs that can lag years behind the research. They use high-quality bioavailable ingredients. That is always my top priority for any vitamin or supplement. An example of this is that they use ferocal iron. This provides optimal absorption and is gentle on your stomach and non-constipating. This is a big deal because constipation is already common during pregnancy, and some prenatal vitamins can make it worse. In the month of May 2026, save 40% off the Zoller Prenatal Plus DHA on Amazon with the code PREPODS40. You can always check for the current promo code at pregnancypodcast.com/vitamin. Let's get back to today's episode. Number 6 on our list is that bonding may build gradually. Many moms expect that the moment they meet their baby, that they will fall instantly and completely in love. And for some, that's exactly what happens. But for many moms, this is not. And the gap between the expectation and the reality can be confusing, and it can also bring up a lot of guilt. Research on bonding shows a much wider range of experiences than the cultural narrative suggests. According to one study, nearly 66% of mothers and 71% of fathers reported a strong bond with their newborn. Now, those numbers are not 100%. Around 29% of mothers and 26% of fathers reported feeling only moderately bonded. 4% of mothers and about 2% of fathers reported poor or no bonding with their new baby. Interestingly, about 45% of moms and 51% of dads actually reported feeling at least a little fearful in the presence of their infants. A small percentage of participants even used words like disappointed, resentful, or sad to describe how they felt. Not every mother will have an instant bond with her baby, and that's okay. Bonding is a process, and there are simple things that can help that process along. It's really the small everyday moments that build that bond. A few minutes of skin-to-skin contact, the times when you're feeding your baby, when you're soothing them, when you're just going through the daily routines of caring for them. And that bond really gets built through these micro interactions, not through a single magical moment at birth. In the article for this episode, there are links to additional episodes that go into more detail on many of the topics we're talking about today. There is a full episode on bonding and connecting with your baby that goes into the research and the practical ways that you can start building that connection during pregnancy. A meta-analysis of 14 studies on maternal-fetal attachment found an association between prenatal thoughts about your baby and parent-child interaction after birth. In practical terms, that means that thinking about your baby now, even just imagining what life with them will be like, can give you a head start on bonding once they arrive. If you hit a point where you're having trouble feeling connected to your baby, that's something worth seeking support for. Your doctor, your midwife, a therapist can be helpful. And the earlier that you reach out, the more support you can get and the easier it can be to get on track with feeling like you are bonded with your baby. Number 7 is be careful comparing yourself to others. We all have expectations about what motherhood will look like. And those expectations are formed from your own family, what you see on TV, and increasingly what you see on social media. Comparison is one of the fastest ways to feel like you are not measuring up, even when you're doing just fine. You've heard the saying, comparison is the thief of joy. And that is especially true in motherhood. What you're seeing on social media is the highlight reel. The perfect bump photos, the gorgeous nursery, the smiling family on a hike at 4 weeks postpartum. What you don't see is the spit up on the floor, the third meltdown of the morning, or the really rough nights that come before that smiling photo. A study found that mothers who spend more time online engage in more social comparison, which leads to increased stress and negative emotions. Research is increasingly clear that passive scrolling, meaning that you're just taking in content without interacting with it, is more damaging than if you were actively using social media, where you're commenting, messaging, posting, or engaging with people that you follow. Passive scrolling tends to make you a spectator to other people's curated lives, and that leads to comparison and feeling like you're falling short. A few practical tips to help. Take a hard look at your feed and unfollow accounts that don't inspire you or actively make you feel worse about yourself. You want to curate a feed of accounts that make you feel seen and supported or that are just genuinely entertaining. Limit how much time you're scrolling, especially in that early postpartum period when you are particularly vulnerable to comparison. And most importantly, remember that your worst day is not comparable to someone else's best post. And most of motherhood happens in the moments that nobody is sharing. Number 8 on our 10 tips to mentally prepare for motherhood is to build your village and let them in. The phrase, "it takes a village," gets thrown around a lot, so much so that it can kind of lose its meaning. But the truth behind it is very real. Mothers were never meant to do this alone. But the reality is that many mothers today are essentially trying to do just that. Whatever your village looks like, start building it now and practice actually letting them help you. Your village could include your partner, family, friends, neighbors, other moms. It could be a postpartum doula, a lactation consultant, a therapist, or anyone who shows up for you. Different people will support you in different ways. Some may help with logistics like meals and errands. Some may be your emotional anchor. Some will simply just come over and hold your baby so you can take a shower. And all of these roles count. Asking for and accepting help can be harder than it sounds. It can feel like admitting that you can't do something on your own or feeling like you're burdening the people that you love. A lot of moms default to powering through everything because sometimes that just feels easier than asking for help. If that resonates with you, if you're the kind of person who's not fantastic at asking for help, start practicing now. Let your partner load the dishwasher the way they do it. Say yes when a friend offers to come by and bring you dinner. Tell your mother-in-law that it would be really helpful if she could pick up some groceries on her way over. Asking for help is a skill, and you will get better at it the more you practice. Another very important part of building your village is making mom friends. There's something different about having friends that have kids. And that's because it's genuinely hard to understand what motherhood is like until you're in it. So other moms that are in that same phase of life or that have been through this phase of life can be a big lifeline in a way that other friends simply cannot. If you do not already have a network of parent friends, you may be lucky and have a lot of people in your friend group that are also having kids right now. That would be amazing. If that's not your situation, there are plenty of opportunities to meet other parents in your area. An in-person birth class is a great place to start. There's also local Facebook groups, mom meetups, or even stroller fitness classes. Number 9 is your relationship with your partner will change. The research on this is clear and consistent across many studies, and knowing what to expect can help you protect your relationship through this transition. A 2022 meta-analysis pooled data from 49 studies involving more than 145,000 participants. The researchers found that marital satisfaction declines significantly and abruptly from pregnancy through 12 months postpartum for both partners, with a smaller continued decline through the second year. All long-term couples tend to see some gradual decline in relationship satisfaction over time, whether or not they have kids. But what the research shows is that the drop is much steeper and much more abrupt for new parents during that first year, and that decline persists at 4, 8, and even 15 years after the first baby's born. A separate 2023 study found that first-time fathers experience a steeper decline than second-time fathers, who tend to recover relationship satisfaction by the time their second child is around 14 months old. Now, the reasons behind this make sense intuitively. You're sleep deprived. The mental load of caring for a newborn is a real struggle. You may be dealing with some financial stress. You're going to have less time alone together with your partner. And there's often a very unequal distribution of labor. All of this puts pressure on the relationship. But none of this means that your relationship is broken or failing. It means that you're going through one of the most demanding transitions that a couple can go through. So knowing this is coming is step 1. The next thing is being intentional about how you and your partner support each other through this. Have conversations now about how you will divide household tasks and baby care and night wake-ups. Talk about what kind of support each of you will need from the other. And very importantly, talk about how you will prioritize your connection as a couple after your baby arrives. The dynamic will shift from two people being able to focus on each other to two people being focused on a baby. And protecting your relationship through that shift takes intention. This can be as simple as regular check-in conversations. It could be a weekly date night at home after your baby's asleep. It could be just carving out small pockets of time that are just about the two of you. If you're not in a committed relationship, the same principle applies to whoever is your primary support. Be clear about what you need, communicate often, and protect those relationships through this transition. Going through this transition into motherhood without support is hard, and leaning on the people that you do have is essential. But it's important to ensure that you are protecting your relationships with those people. The last tip, number 10 on our 10 tips to mentally prepare for motherhood, is find your own parenting path. There's no one right way to be a good mother, and you're going to get lots of advice from family, friends, strangers at the grocery store, social media accounts, parenting books, and your own internal critic. Your job is not to follow any single voice. It's to find the version of motherhood that works for you, your baby, and your family. Some of the advice that you will hear or come across is well-meaning. Some of it will cross into criticism. In a national poll, 61% of moms reported being criticized for their parenting choices, most often by other family members. 42% of those moms said that the criticism made them feel unsure about their parenting at times. If there were one right way to parent, then babies would come with a manual and we would all use it. Unfortunately, that does not exist. There's a concept that was introduced in the 1950s by a pediatrician and psychoanalyst that's useful here. This is the good enough mother. The point is that being a perfect parent is not only impossible, but it's also not the goal. A good enough mother meets her baby's needs most of the time. They make mistakes, they repair them, and they give their child the experience of a real, fallible, loving human, which is exactly what that child needs to develop into a real, fallible, capable human themselves. There has been some criticism of how this concept has been popularized. Some clinicians argue that it's been turned into a permission slip to do less than you could, rather than to accept normal imperfection. To be clear here, the goal is not to coast and do the bare minimum. The goal is to free yourself from the impossible standard of perfection while still showing up fully and intentionally for your baby. Striving to be present, attentive, and loving most of the time, and then forgiving yourself for the times that you fall short is much more sustainable and more useful for your baby than chasing perfection. A lot of parenting is trial and error. You'll learn what works, you're going to learn what doesn't work, and you're going to make adjustments along the way. And that's true for every parent that has ever existed. Mistakes are part of how you learn what your child needs and what kind of parent you want to be. Also, keep in mind, there's not a decision that you'll make in the early weeks that will permanently shape who your child becomes. What shapes your child is the long arc of being there for them. So take what's useful from the advice that you receive and leave the rest. There's no one right way to do this, and you're going to find the path that is right for you as you go. Mentally preparing for motherhood is not about having everything figured out before your baby arrives. No amount of preparation will give you that, and chasing that will be exhausting. What you can do is set realistic expectations and know what to look for when something feels harder than it should. And that's really what most of these 10 tips that we talked about today are about. Becoming a mom changes you. The brain research shows that. The research on identity shows that. Your relationships, your time, your sense of self, your priorities, all of that will shift. But none of it's a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that you're just stepping into something different. To recap everything that we talked about in today's episode, we went through 10 tips to mentally prepare for motherhood. 1, that you're becoming a new version of yourself. We talked about how your brain actually changes and adapts for motherhood. I went through planning for time to adjust to all of the changes. We went through the wide array of emotions that can come after having a baby and talked particularly about those hard emotions that may catch you by surprise. I covered bonding with your new baby and how bonding builds gradually. It's not necessarily an instant connection. We talked about comparison being the thief of joy and being careful comparing yourself to others, building your village, and improving on the skill of asking people for help. We covered how your relationship with your partner will change and how you can prioritize that relationship, and ended the episode talking about finding your own parenting path. Thank you so much for tuning into the Pregnancy Podcast today. I hope that you find this episode helpful. Please share this episode if you know someone who's expecting. So many listeners discover the podcast through recommendations, and I appreciate you sharing it. As always, you can reach me, Vanessa, at pregnancypodcast.com. You can read the full article and see all of the resources that accompany this episode at pregnancypodcast.com/motherhood. If this episode resonated with you, there's a lot more where that came from inside Pregnancy Podcast Premium. Members get every episode covering every stage from early pregnancy through postpartum and life with a new baby, an ad-free private feed in your favorite podcast app, and a free copy of the Your Birth Plan book. Check it out at pregnancypodcast.com/premium.